all and welcome. An excerpt from Invictus, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole. I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. It captures the very movement of our existence in the current world environment. While COVID has created that pitch dark night for us, it is our unconquerable soul which is helping us pull through this. While it is true that experiences like this is the hardest teacher as it gives us the test first, it is also true there are also lessons to be learned. It has pushed the global economy to its limits. Global government borrowing is at levels not previously seen, and we see negative GDP growth all over. And yet, we see human virtues or what is pulling us all through, be it our positive outlook on new vaccine discovery around the corner, or that acceptability that if even COVID stays, the life must go on. While the above huge positive factors are keeping the spirits high, there are shifts which have been turbocharged by these historical event called COVID, whether in politics with people talking about decoupling of economies and trade protectionism on in workspace, where at breakneck speed digitization, artificial intelligence and automation are taking place, or in our personal life, where we have started talking about sharing is not caring, and yet, because of virtual mediums, we seem to be more connected. Under these circumstances, it becomes increasingly essential to examine some of the macroeconomic scenarios and cautiously assess the short-term and long-term risk that the economy faces. Well, to hear more on this, we have with us Padma Shri, Mr. T.V. Mohandas Pai, to speak on perspective on Indian and global economy during the COVID era. Before I invite Mr. Mohandas Pai, I invite Mr. Ramki to introduce him and take the session forward.
Thank you, Kala. Good evening and warm welcome to members of ICAI Singapore chapter and fellow members of ICAI India and overseas chapters. I also welcome the other distinguished guests at today's webinar. We have an illustrious and renowned speaker today who needs no introduction. Padma Shri awardee and fellow chartered accountant, Mr. Mohandas Pai, who is a thought leader and a person deeply respected for his knowledge of the Indian economy, global market trends, and geopolitical developments. CA Mohandas Pai dons many hats and is currently the chairman of Manipal Global Education. He was the CFO of Infosys, past chairman of SEBI, board member of NSE and other companies, both in India and abroad. He is actively involved in the startup ecosystem in India and advises many companies in India and abroad, and also works with governments and regulators on policy matters. CA Mohandas Pai is also engaged in many philanthropic activities and is a co-founder of Akshaya Patra, the largest midday meal program in India. On that note, let me begin by just setting the stage for today's program. As Kala mentioned, we are all living through this COVID era, an era of despair and, may I say, hope, an era that has impacted every living human being on this planet in some form or the other. Countries and governments have stepped in and played a role and are yet grappling with this invisible virus which has turned into a pandemic. As an outline for today's program, Mr. Mohandas Pai, our keynote speaker, will cover a presentation with a few key aspects around COVID-19 and what we have seen post-July 20, where most countries have moved into an unlock phase, where lives and livelihoods are supposed to coexist. What does this mean for developed and developing economies? Our keynote speaker will share his views on how countries are impacted and how countries are handling the pandemic, and are there any common lessons that the world has learned? The second topic is, are we witnessing a multipolar world where leaders are having to align themselves to domestic audience and the basic tenets of globalization are being diluted? Can countries afford to be selfish, protectionist, and refuse to collaborate and synergize, whether it is COVID or whether it is climate change? We are witnessing seismic shifts in the attitude of political leaders and countries. And thirdly, we talk about the Indian economy. What are the current headwinds and tailwinds faced by India? The COVID situation, as we all know, is still not under control. The country has effectively gone into an unlock mode, which is understandable from a point of view of livelihoods. We also would like to know which are the specific sectors that have been impacted. Is demand bouncing back in FMCG, in auto, in real estate, in construction, in agriculture, or is it likely to remain muted? On that note, let me welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Mohandas Pai, and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. If you can play my presentation, I'll be very happy.
Yeah. Yes, I'll do.
Folks, good to talk to all of you.
Okay, you can
and
see.
I'll be very happy to have a conversation. This presentation is titled Post-COVID, a New Normal for India. Next, please. Well, we need to understand that COVID-19 is an event which has never happened in the last 100 years. We can't go back beyond that because it impacted a larger part of the physical world. The First World War and Second World War had higher casualties. 16 million the First World War, 60 million Second World War. But a larger part of the world was not impacted, not destroyed. But here we see 150 countries which have been impacted by COVID all across. Right now, there is no cure. Maybe cases are coming down. People are waiting for a vaccine and people are learning how to live with COVID. And I think cases are going up all over. There have been flattening of cases. Some countries have opened up again. Some countries are seeing the second wave. Some countries may see the third wave. We don't know. And now news is coming out from certain people that COVID, the second wave is not exactly a second wave in Europe. And we have many theories coming out as to what happened and why it happened, etc. It happened in China, we know that. It spread from China, we know that. But China has done very well. And now the two biggest countries in number of cases is the US and India. But India, based on a population of 1.38 billion people on a per million basis, is quite low compared to the United States, which is quite low compared to many countries in Europe. Next. The health impact on India has been quite high, but we don't have to worry because the death rate has been quite low. Death rate is about 68, 70 per million people, and the death rate in the US and other countries are much higher. Infection rate per million in India is also low. We must also look at rate per million people. Just the other day, we had a very bad case of rape in Hathras in some other states, and everybody all around. Yeah, next, please. And the next slide. Yeah, thank you. This slide, yes. People started abusing India to say, oh, there's a lot of rape happening. But if you look at sexual assault against women per million population is quite low in India, even if you factor in the fact that many people may not register. Anurag Saxena, who lives in Singapore, has got something called data reveals, which talks about it. So I think we should look at India from the point of view of data. The infection overall is coming down. The people who have been cured is around 86, 87%. Death rate is down to 1.6. It may come down to 1.1, 1.2% in the next maybe 1 month. Certain states are doing very well. Certain states are not doing well. The more populous states are doing well. Karnataka has not done well. It's still about 10,000 a day. Bangalore is about 4,200 a day. So very disparate view of data all over. But overall as a country, after going up to about 93, 94,000 per day, we come down to 76,000. And if we take an average, we're around 85,000 cases per day. So I think people are realizing that you have to go back to their working life. Livelihood is more important. We had a big migrant crisis when about 10 million people went away from the big cities like Delhi and Mumbai and other cities and went back to the villages. And work programs have started in those areas. Next, please. The economic impact has been severe. IMF says, based upon the last update, that the world GDP may shrink by 4.9 trillion, 9%. I would estimate that by the time this ends, it could be around maybe 6 to 8%. India's GDP declined by 24% last quarter. The US by 32%, $2.14 trillion of GDP disappeared. Japan was minus 28 for that quarter. This is not annual, this is first for a quarter. Europe 11.4% because Europe got it earlier. And then China did well last quarter, that is the June quarter, and it actually went up. And of course, if you look at what is happening in the September quarter, my view is that India's GDP could be down maybe 8 to 10% because we had a good July, much better August, and September has been very, very good. September actually saw growth over September 2019. And in August, we had a GST collection, which is 5% higher than August of 2019. Yes, large parts of the economy in the service area, like retail, like travel, like the airlines and airports and tourism is not doing well. But manufacturing has picked up, and part of the services has picked up, professional services has picked up, government sector has picked up, and the informal sector seems to have picked up. Agriculture growth has been very good. So I think for the full year, India could be something like 5 to 7%. Just today, one of the analysts revised their projections from minus 11% to minus 7%. And if you look at the United States, my view is the July to September quarter could be maybe 15% down from minus 32% because the large part of the service sector, which is 85% US GDP, has not come back. And they're still having challenges there. And of course, the midst of the elections, Japan had 28%, maybe in the quarter July to August, there could be maybe 10, 11% because, all these countries have a huge service sector. And a large part of the service sector are retail, like cafes, restaurants, travel, tourism, etc., airlines, and they're not come back. So I think for the full year, the world could be 6 to 8% down, and India could be 5 to 7%, and the US could be possibly 10 to 12%. So we will go back to pre-COVID globally, possibly in the calendar year 2022. So 2020 will be a year of decline. 2021, hopefully a year of, coming up, and 2022 may be a more normal year. And even for India too, next year, we hope to see positive growth in our financial year. And I think we'll see much more of industry come up. We're now entering the festival season. September has been very good. Hopefully October, November, December will be good. But we don't know whether it'll sustain in January, February, March, because we still have the service sector, which has been hurt. And a lot of the high-paying jobs are in the service sector in India. And what did the governments do? The central banks of various countries reduce interest rates. We have seen the US interest rate come to 0.25%. India reduced. Japan has been negative. The UK came down to negative for a few days, and again it's gone back to 0.1%. So all around the world in developed countries, there has been stimulus, and central banks have pumped money into the markets in the hope that increased liquidity will keep business afloat. And every single country has come out with its own stimulus program. Next, please. This time is different. Well, every time is different. Maybe this time is different. It's more intense and sudden. The world fell off a cliff in March, April. Everybody locked down because the consensus was the only way to prevent this spreading was to lock down and to have social distancing. Is more pervasive because a larger geographical area. And the world economy was very fragile when it happened because the trade war with China and the US was going on. Consumption was in the decline. Global growth was in decline. And globalization was in retreat. And global economies have been more integrated so that nobody can shut shop and do well. Even though China seems to have done remarkably well because the exports as percent of GDP have gone up to 30% in 2019. And international travel is about 1.46 billion people in 2018. And I think these are very, very large numbers showing how the world is interconnected. Next, please. This shows over-reliance on China. What has shown up is that there is a greater over-reliance on China. And I think this is standing out very well. China made up 24% of global manufacturing. And the United States found that 92% of some medicine were made in China. And all supply chain efficiency went to China. After entering WTO, China has benefited the most. The US has benefited somewhat, but not in terms of employment or other opportunities. And China has become a technology power today, competing with the Japan, competing with Germany, and competing with the Taiwan. So it can compete with the US. Maybe 85–90% innovation that happens in the US happens in China too. And the world is now looking at diversifying supply chain. And already we've seen manufacturing go from China back to maybe Vietnam because just across the border, and maybe the Chinese companies themselves are going away. And in Japan, there's a $2.2 billion stimulus for companies to shift from Japan, from China back to Japan, and now to India and Bangladesh. So countries all around the world are very careful about not over-depending on a single country. They want to diversify. And we will see this happening over the next 3 to 5 years. And this also means that globalization is in retreat because we may not see the same kind of free market, same kind of world that was before COVID, even though it's a bit shaky. Next, please. Now, stimulus was $9 billion sometime, $9 trillion sometime back. Now, I think it's close to $12.5, $13 trillion. We could end up with $15 trillion. Before this, there was $36 trillion of OECD bonds, out of which 18 trillion was negative interest rates. Now, with this 15 trillion, possibly we could see it going up to about $44, $45 trillion, and maybe more of the global bonds will be negative. These are repercussions on the pension industry, the financial service industry, and the repercussions on consumer spending because people may not generate returns on their pension fund. The US has led the way with $3 trillion. Another $2 trillion is on the way. Japan had $2 trillion. Every single country has come out with their own stimulus. And I think before we end December, more stimulus will be required. And in the Western world, the stimulus was to give money to MSMEs to keep employment. And in India, the stimulus was largely to give free rations, money, and cooking gas and everything else for the 60% of population, which is vulnerable below the poverty line, or maybe, in difficult circumstances, to keep body and soul together because their capacity to survive when there's no work was very low. Government has started a very, very large program for work to employ them and give them a little bit of money. And I think that is working fairly well. So you've seen that this kind of a stimulus has never been seen in history and is much more required for the balanced part of this year. Next. India has really programmed 20 lakh crores. 20 lakh crores will be something like about $260 billion, out of which about 3 lakh crores, 3.5 lakh crores actually impacting the budget. Government spend 8 lakh crores for the RBI's liquidity measures that reduce interest rates, reduce the cash reserve ratio, and allowed banks to borrow money from the Reserve Bank for certain lending. And the government of India came with a 3 lakh crore. That is about 3 lakh crores will be something like about maybe $40 billion of guaranteed loans, and more than 70% has already been approved. And we are seeing 1 lakh crore of farm gate investment coming in. And the government of India took this opportunity to reform the labor laws, reform farming, reform defense, reform industry, MSMEs, etc. Tremendous amount of backlog of reforms has been done all through in the last 4 months, which is very, very good, especially in defense and agriculture, etc. There's some agitation going off in India because vested interests are trying to stop that. But overall, I think a big, big reform. Government is now saying that they'll come with another reform based upon what they see in the next 2 or 3 months, hopefully for the middle class, and maybe for the poorer class to continue free rations till at least December. We're having an election in Bihar in the month of November. So India has done reasonably well. They're keeping powder dry, and hopefully they'll do more. There has been much talk of a greater amount of reform, but certainly India does not have the capacity the US has of printing its own currency, which will be bought by the rest of the world. Next. Well, we have seen certain industries impacted. Crude oil collapsed. Before COVID, crude oil was around 95, 100 million barrels of consumption a day. And then it came down to $70 million when China shut up and the world went into lockdown. And that's the time when Saudi Arabia tried to get Russia on board to have a cartel and to improve the prices by cutting production. Russia refused, Saudi Arabia increased production, oil prices fell. We saw the oil prices in the US become negative for derivatives. And I think slowly oil prices climb back. They're around $42, $43 per barrel for Brent, and maybe $38, $39 a barrel for Texas crude. But what is going to happen that is for sure is oil consumption may not rise for the next 2 or 3 years. And we could have seen the peaking of oil. There's always been discussion about the peaking of oil. And the reasons are also very clear because economic growth will be impaired for the next 2 years. And 2, we are seeing the rise of alternate energy with a vengeance. When the lockdown, people had blue skies. We actually had blue skies in Bangalore and Delhi. Water was clean and the environment was much, much better. And now, of course, people are going back to normal. And all around the world, people are looking at climate change and people are very careful. They don't want to go back to the bad old days of bad air and bad skies and bad water, etc. And they want to have a better future. And that means for oil, it will be very difficult. Before COVID, at $70 a barrel, oil was possibly about $4.5 trillion of GDP. Now it's come down to maybe $3 trillion of GDP. And at $3 trillion, the Middle East countries are not able to balance their budget because you can see that the budget can only be balanced at a higher price. So they have to draw down the reserves. Now, Saudi Arabia will have to draw down $60 to $70 billion of reserves. That means geopolitics will change because all these oil exporting countries don't have enough reserves. in terms of money to last, or the reserves will come down. They may have to borrow money. Countries like Venezuela, countries like Nigeria are in bad shape, and we got to see how it farms out. Saudi Arabia is going on a reform program, both for social issues as well as economic issues. It has got stalled, but we have seen UAE tie up with Israel. So COVID becomes an opportunity for a change in geopolitics. And by the time this goes away in maybe 2 years' time, we may see a very, very different political world. China, of course, has become the hegemon, and South China Sea is rattling his saber on the borders with India, and the world is standing firm. And we have the quad of United States, India, Japan, and Australia trying to make sure that Asia remains safe and the shipping areas remain safe. So a lot of action happening. A big industry like oil is deeply impacted. Big industries like airlines is deeply, deeply impacted. Next, please. And look at this slide. This slide shows you the impact just at a glance. Zoom has gone up. Zoom is zooming, and the airline industry has come down. All of us have changed our habits. All of us are staying at home, talking to each other by Zoom. We have adjusted to the digital world. The digital world has come with a thumb, and all around the world, people are doing everything digital, most things digital, and we can see it in Zoom itself. And the global airlines industry may take 3 or 4 years to come back, because national flying has come down. International travel is almost non-existent, even though they're trying to create bubbles. And countries dependent on international tourism like Thailand, maybe Singapore, are not seeing the kind of growth that they want to see, may not see for a long period of time. And many of the global airlines may not actually come back, even though many are getting bailed out. In the US, again, all the airlines said if they don't get $20 billion immediately, they have to lay off 40, 50,000 people. And that means if the industry doesn't pick up in the next 3 or 4 months, more of them will be in deep trouble. So industries like aviation, tourism, retail, coffee shops, and all the small restaurants are there. I hear that Singapore has opened up. More people are going to restaurants. There's good news. Hopefully it will come back in the US too, in other places. But people are used to home delivery. People are used to home cooking. People's incomes has come down. So we have to wait for some more time to see how this comes back. Next. The new normal, global tech, the rise of the digital monopolies. Apple has done extremely well. Alphabet has done extremely well. Amazon has done extremely well. Facebook has done extremely well. Tesla has done extremely well. The Fangman companies, including NVIDIA, have gone up to $7.5 trillion in GDP, their own GDP, that means the market value. And now, of course, they come down 20-25%. But you can see how all this has benefited these digital monopolies. Now they're diversifying using data and using AI. We know that Apple is in music. Apple has got that app store. They're in devices. Alphabet is in autonomous cars. They're in healthcare, and they're giving infrastructure. Amazon has gone on to home security. Amazon has gone on to Alexa and other devices. They want to be in the home. They're doing many things. And this has played to the strength in a big way. But the world is going to be very different when normality comes, because everybody will be digital. The last 6 months, people have used e-commerce for delivery of groceries. They don't go to shops and buy. And they are also making sure that they get their health through telemedicine. Children get education through e-education. They're making payments through digital payments. And they're getting entertainment to Netflix, Hotstar, or whatever it is. So the way we live has changed, and habits are not going to relapse back to the past. So we are going to enter a new normal, which is entirely digital, and where digital will drive the growth. Next. And here you can see that how the market valuation has gone up, and big tech has got bigger and bigger. And I think this is a phenomenon that will remain for more time. As they get bigger, they get more business. Many other businesses will be destroyed. And I think the world needs to make sure that they take care of it. I've been propounding that the world now requires a universal declaration of digital rights, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1946 by the United Nations, so that most people around the world will be protected digitally for the data, for their access to the digital world will not be shut out of the networks. Next. The new normal in Indian tech, before COVID, Indian tech was going up, and now they accelerated their growth. In the last 3 years, we've seen how they've grown. And many of these startups who have become unicorns, who could become unicorns later, are doing very well. India today has 50,000 startups who have created $170 billion of value. And we got 40 unicorns. By 2025, we'll have 100 unicorns. We'll have 100,000 startups. We'll create $500 billion of value. So technology is very hot in India. In the last 6 years, from 2014 till now, we got $60 billion of capital coming in. Only 6%, only 6 billion was Indian. Government of India shut out China, was given 8 billion over the last 6 years. But nevertheless, we see many more Western companies come. And in the last 4 months, we've seen Reliance Jio raise $20 billion. And all the big PE funds globally in the United States have come here. And, it's been exciting that India's largest company, which has gone digital, which was ready, was able to raise $20 billion across 2 corporations just in a matter of 4 months. So I think tech in India has done very well. The software service industry has seen growth in the first quarter of this financial year. And this quarter, September 2, analysts say that they're going to see very good growth. Employment has come back. And I think the whole world going digital is good for Indian IT and good for India. Next. The new normal opportunity capture. We've seen certain industry capture the opportunity, e-commerce, entertainment and health, and food delivery, and travel and hotel technologies have not done well. So some are done well, some are not done well. More the impact of the lockdown. Next. Well, the new investment, what is happening in the market says flow of good quality secondaries. And of course, in the public markets, we have the largest number of IPOs ever in the history in the month of September. There's going to be consolidation in financial services because most banks don't have enough capital. There's going to be growth in manufacturing by the better capitalized companies who are manufacturing and expanding and exporting. New age business with clear path to profitability and startups are doing extremely well. The revenues have gone up 2x, 3x in the last 6 months. And people are beginning to downtrade now, because downtrade means prices will be low. For FMCG companies, I think, they'll be downtrading. Maybe Baba Ramdev will do extremely well because his price are 30% of the Hindustan Lever charges, because people are looking for greater bargains. People have been hurt, especially the middle class. And I think sectors with a good risk cushion are doing well. So the big will get bigger if they have enough cash in the balance sheet. If they're heavily leveraged, they're going to be in deep trouble. We already see the winners coming out in many, many sectors. Next. Post-cash, we've seen a decline in cash usage over the last, even though during COVID, cash holding has gone up from 21 lakh crores to 26 lakh crores. And we actually seen that digital payments are exceeding withdrawals from the ATM. So India is at the inflection point. And just last month, we had UPI with 1.8 billion transactions, 3,27,000 crores of transfers. And this quarter, October, we could see them having 2 billion transactions. Just in 3 years, from almost 0 to 2 billion transactions a month is unbelievable. It's because of the innovation that happens in India through India Stack. So I think digital innovation, digital growth has taken off in this country. Next. Digital content, we'll be happy to see that, in Jio, they had 11.3 GB of data consumption per subscriber in March. I think it's gone up to 14 in June. And Airtel had 14.9 and it's gone up to 17 GB. You can get unlimited data for $1.50 a month. And viewership in terms of, mobile gaming and in terms of entertainments has shot up. So we are seeing an increase in subscription to Hotflix and Netflix. And I think the digital content, India is at a totally different level. Next. New normal in education. Education has been a prime beneficiary. We may have 4 unicorns in education. We already have one Baiju. We have another one, Una Academy, which has come up. And we could have Vedantu and another 1 or 2 other companies come up, which could happen in a short while. Next. Baiju had 70 million subscribers. They had 25 million before COVID, 70 million not paying, about 5 million paying customers right now. And Baiju is valued at $11.8 billion post money. They just raised $1 billion in the last 1 month, and they still got demand for people to give them money. And Baiju has done extremely well. You'll all be happy to know that Arin Capital, which Ranjan Pai and I founded, were the first to give them capital in the first round in 2012. We gave them $9 million and 20 million pre. We had 30% of the company at that point of time. We, of course, got diluted till now. We still got a good holding, and we made a little bit of money. So it's been a fantastic thing. From 30 million in 2012 to $11.8 billion. It's been unbelievable. But it's got great content, a large team, good technology, fantastic marketing guy, and a great innovator. He's become the most valuable edtech company in the world. Next. New health, I think, India's technology progress has come. We have a new app today, Health Tech. Arogya Setu is part of it. And the National Health Stack has different layers. It has an augmentation layer, a financing layer, and a jam and Trinity layer. And I think this is tremendous because this has been a public utility developed by volunteers in Bangalore and given to government. And very soon, with the government insurance program of getting 500 million people, out of which 12 million people have benefited so far in terms of hospitalization benefits, we will have the largest data of a human health condition for any country in the world over the next maybe 3 to 5 years. And with this data, we can run algorithms to do very well. Next, please. The new normal health tech, many health tech companies that come up like Dozy. Dozy is a company which has come out with a unique solution using IoT devices to take care of ICUs. All our ICUs have been shut up because they're all full with COVID patients. There have been deaths because people could not get into ICU. Now they have a technology whereby they keep a blanket layer below the bed, and that picks up your heartbeat, picks up your vital signs, and registers that and sends it to a mobile device every single minute. So a doctor could be somewhere else and could monitor your progress across vital parameters every single moment, and they could take action. So you don't have to be in an ICU. You could be in an ordinary bed and get monitored and get relief whenever is required. This kind of innovation which can dramatically alter healthcare has come up in a very big way. Next. In agri-tech too, we have many agri-tech companies. They're doing very well today because labor has been short. They're using IoT devices to find out the condition of the soil. They're using drones to find out weather patterns and to find out the crop condition. They're using sensing devices to see how the crop is going. They water it based upon weather conditions. They cut the crop in time and they dispatch the markets. So we are seeing, but they're still small, but I think we're going to see tremendous amount of increase in the future. And in the agriculture sector, I'm very, very hopeful farmers will double the income by 2022 because the farm sector has been opened up and they'll probably get closer to market prices than earlier. Next. You can see the agri-tech where things are happening. There's a case study of a company called Ibono, which is doing extremely well. They're in the Nilgiris and they are buying exotic vegetables and their revenue has doubled. They're small, but the technology used can be scaled up in a tremendous manner. Next. Grocery too, you can see the delivery that happened. And now we got Geo, which has already got 400,000 orders a day. And we are seeing that many companies like Big Basket, like Licious, etc., are doing extremely well. The revenues have gone up 2x to 3x, and they're already in a large part of the country. And this growth has come, and they are big beneficiaries. Of course, GeoMart will be the big disruptor because they got capital, they got scale, they got delivery points, they got a retail physical store all across India, and they'll be there to capitalize. And it means there's going to be competition in the FMCG space. If you get a few million of these retailers, mom and pop shops, Kirana stores coming onto your platform, you can aggregate all their orders and then go to Hindustan Lever and say, I want 20% off. If you don't give me the order, I'll go to Babaji and Babaji will give you the 25% off. So I think there's going to be a time when you're going to see margins of all these big manufacturers shrink because their success was based upon the distribution channels. They were able to distribute to 600,000, 700,000 stores. They built it up over the last 100 years. And now we have this disruption whereby the digital way of distribution has come. And that's going to be a very, very big disruption. Next. The India Stack has been a great piece of public use software. And that has stood India well. When Prime Minister Modi spoke about digital India 5 years ago, there are many skeptics. But today we've seen the benefits because in terms of digital India, we had the Jam Trinity, Jandan, Aadhaar, and mobile. By Jandan, 400 million people open bank accounts. And Aadhaar, 1.2 billion people have a number. They have an identity, and they can use the money identity for money transfer. And mobile, India has got 1.2 billion connections, 900 million people who've got a unique phone number, 680 million people on the internet. That is tremendous. We'll not rate among the top 20, 30 because Singapore with 5 million, 6 million population may come in the top 5. But we have got 680 million people on the internet. That's huge. The world only looks at penetration. They don't look at larger countries. You can't compare Singapore with India. You got to compare Singapore with Bangalore, and then Bangalore will come out very well. Now, the India Stack was designed by volunteers in Bangalore. It is a public utility. We don't pay for transfers. You can transfer money from one mobile to another in 30 seconds across the banking system. It goes to the banking system. It's not a mobile wallet. And you can have a DigiLocker, you can have eKYC, eSign, and you can have an open data store where you can keep all the data. Just now from 1st October, when we travel, we don't have to show the policeman our physical documents for insurance or license, we can just show them what we have stored in the digit store, and that will be quite okay. So I think the laws are also getting changed to do all this. Next. India's for tech-first governance, we had Arogya Setu, which is an app released by the government to track people with COVID. And today we had about 120 million people who have withdrawn. We have downloaded that. We reached 50 million within 13 days. The world record is Pokemon, but India beat the record for the public utility. You can see the technology assimilation and the rate of change just by using this app. And now later, this app is going to morph into the next India health stack. Next. Tech-enabled governance. Now, this is where the benefits of technology reach out to India's poor. Like I said, Prime Minister Modi made sure the bottom 60% were able to get money. 200 million women got money into the bank account. 85, 90 million farmers got money into the bank account. Gas cylinders were given to, free cylinders were given to 85 million women. About 3.5 million, 35 million, 30 million construction workers got money. And the vulnerable sections got free rations for 6 months. And they got extra rations. And even social security withdrawals could be done. All this happened rapidly only because of Digital India initiatives of making sure every Indian has got a bank account, every Indian has got at least a feature phone, and the data plans are very cheap. The whole country has wireless, etc. And this is a tremendous, tremendous program. And no Prime Minister in India's history has done as much for the poor in 5 years as Prime Minister Modi has done. He has made sure that everybody will have a house, water in the tap, power in the switch, a toilet in the house, a roof, the toilet in the house, education for the children, a mobile connection, a gas stove, and hopefully jobs for everybody. Next. So India's long-term growth is still intact. India has the lowest external debt to GDP of 20% because our internal debt is high at 80%. External debt is very, very low. And India has a low trade deficit. We are running at a surplus right now because we are not importing enough and exports also are down. We have a very young population. We have the largest working age population in the world. Of course, a lot of them are not trained. A lot of them are not skilled, but the challenge is there. But we have enough skilled people, and we'll be the only country to export young people to meet positions all around the world. When in the developed countries, population growth rate is coming down, and they're not having enough young people, and they have to take care of older people. And there's strong tailwinds in the form of falling crude oil prices, because crude oil prices will remain hopefully $45 to $50, and that will give a big, big boon to India. The foreign exchange reserves have gone up to $545 billion, an all-time high, and it will possibly go up even more as the balance of the year comes through. So India is in reasonably good shape. And like I said, GDP will come back from January, February, March, and hopefully the benefits of COVID in the form of increased productivity, increased use of technology, the GST working itself out to the system, improved roads, better supply chain efficiency, etc., will work out. The Indian railways are now transporting goods at 45 kilometers an hour across the network, as against 25 kilometers an hour because the passenger trains are stopped. But even if the passenger trains come back, they'll still continue because they have reduced the schedule of passenger trains and stoppage. And the next year we'll have the Eastern Freight Corridor, Western Freight Corridor, which will take care of most of the freight trains going from south to north, east to west, etc. And that will help tremendously to reduce the supply chain costs, which are 14% before GST. Now it's come down to 12%. Hopefully it should come down to 9 to 10% in the next 2 years. China is at 6%, US is 5%, and that's been the major complaint. Prime Minister has an Atmanirbhar program by which finally they learned how to incentivize companies. They created a program for mobile phones. We had 225 million mobile phones being manufactured last year. We exported $5 billion, and now they have a new program. Value added is only 25%, could go up to 40% in the next 2 years. And India will export possibly 500 million mobiles in the next maybe 3 to 4 years, cumulatively. And I think they're doing the same for air conditioning. They're doing the same for steel. They're doing the same for drug manufacturing, especially APIs. So they learned that if you want better production, more of self-reliance, you got to have. Of course, they raise the tariff in some cases because most of the goods come to China. And China has not been good to India. We have a trade deficit of $500 billion in China over the last 10 years. Every year we have a $50 billion hole. I've been following that, going to China. They don't open their markets. They have non-tariff barriers, etc., and they dump their goods on every single country. And India was right in not signing the RCEP because India has a free trade agreement with Japan and with Southeast Asia and with Australia. And the only thing that would happen was China would have come and they would have used that to dump goods into India because China has got huge capacities, growth has come down, and they can use the surplus and dump in any country. And I think India did not want that. So Indian government policy, even though many will criticize for not being open, not opening up, having tariffs, still is working well for India's benefit. Some could quarrel and say that we are not opened up, you might grow faster, but we don't know. We are better off not being over dependent on China, because China has become very hostile to India in the last 2-3 years. Next. Thank you very much. And I want to end by saying, well, this is a gap year. All around the world, we got to look at this a gap year, a year of, a bad year. Like Queen Elizabeth said, annus horribilis, at a very, very bad year. And we got to just let it go and work for recovery and hope for the best and get back to a normal life. COVID is not going to go away any soon. Vaccines may come early next year. We have a presidential election in the United States. We don't know what is going to happen. And all around the world, there'll be change. Impact of COVID is very severe. Some countries will rise and do well. Some countries will be flat. Geopolitics will change and the world will change. But I feel India will reach $5 trillion by 2026 and $10 trillion by 2031. Growth will come back. India is a country constrained by supply, not demand. Supply at a price, and Indian industry is becoming more efficient. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohandas Pai, for an excellent overview across a wide range of topics, from big tech to agri to mobile to India Stack. Your abilities to synthesize, articulate, and lay out the picture for the audience is quite fascinating. So thank you once again. Before we move into a live Q&A, I have a few questions which I had lined up, and maybe I'll just yours. In this COVID era, what is expected in the Indian banking system post-moratorium restructuring? Do you see a massive spike in defaults and hence growth of GNPAs? How do you see different slices of the system being impacted? Public sector banks, private sector banks, NBFCs? I know there have been various schemes, but it'll be nice to just get a sense as of end of September how this whole thing is looking like, because credit flow into the system is an integral part of economic revival.
Well, right now, credit demand is not going up because there is no investment happening by the private sector. We're surplus in power, we're surplus in ports, airlines are not working at full capacity, and many infrastructure areas are not working. The road sector is doing well, construction is going up, government has got money, the roads just have to be sold. So I think India has to come up. Even in auto, we got surplus capacity of 5.5 million. We're just manufacturing maybe 2.5 million this year. So I think that's an issue. So investment demand is not there. Real estate is down. Construction came down by 50% in the first quarter of this year. And it'll take some time for it to normalize, even though there are much money given to them to come back. But that's going to take time because they don't have labor in the big cities. And many of them are close to bankruptcy. So that is a point. Second, they're trying to pump up personal lending. Personal lending will go up, but much of the middle class is not trying to borrow because they're not very sure of the job. They got salary cuts, etc. Hopefully, car sales will pick up this month because, last month was good production. The wholesale demand was very good. Retail demand should come back this year. And e-commerce companies are gearing up to have big sales this month because of festival demand. So this month, October, November, we'll see whether consumer demand will come up. The mood will change when economy normalizes. Now, as far as bad debts are concerned, yes, I think across the system, the NPS may go up by about 4%. 4% is 4 lakh crores. 4 lakh crores is something like about $55 billion. And $55 billion is about 2 years operating profit of the banking system. Only 2 years operating profit. So the State Bank of India is very well. Their NPS has come down to 2.5%. They are 25% of India. And ICAI Bank, Axis Bank, and HDFC are again 25% of India. They're doing fairly well. They're low, and they got enough profitability to take this on. And the other banks, like the 5 big banks which are being merged, they're doing fairly well. 25% of the banks may have problems. So 50% of India's banking is in decent shape. They will start lending money. Interest rates have come down. Working capital loans will go up this quarter. So it will take another 1 year for investment demand to come up. And I don't think the thing is very, very worrisome, like some people make it out to be, because we are past that peak of NPAs. And there are not many corporate loans that have gone back. All the big corporate loans, they already been provided for, are they under resolution. So I don't think we have a corporate sector which will go back. The MSMEs will have NPAs. The personal loan sector may have NPAs. Agriculture is doing very well. So I think these two sectors, MSMEs and personal loans, but in MSMEs, because the 3 lakh crore guaranteed loans given, they kick the can down the road. So there'll be more time for people to absorb those losses. So I think, I'm not very worried because the peak is over 2 years ago and we're seeing the benefits, but lending has to come back. And that is a matter of worry as to when lending will go back again.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. We are a bunch of chartered accountants, and one of the questions that is always top of mind for us is, what do you see as the emerging role of CFOs during the COVID era? What has changed in the last 6 months, and how can CFOs play a meaningful role in business strategy, in budgeting and planning, liquidity management, credit risk, right? And if I may just ask a slightly more related question and combine it, is opportunities for chartered accountants in the new world order in terms of what new skills, is work from home going to be order of the day? Can CAs be doing audit and advisory from remote? So, if you could just touch on these two topics. Firstly, the CFO related question, the role of a CFO in the COVID era.
Well, I think Anil Agarwal is here from former KPMG. He's been the auditor for Infosys, and I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
CFOs have realized that survival is the first priority for companies.
Yes.
CFOs are responsible for the financial integrity of the enterprise. It means that they have to make sure the balance sheet is solid, that there's enough money in the balance sheet for any contingency. From 1994, when I was the CFO, till I left, we made sure we had enough cash on the Infosys balance sheet to meet 1 year's expenditure without earning a single penny of revenue, without laying off people. We built up cash of 35,000 crores. And every year I had to give a story to the analysts why we need the money. And they would always laugh at me. We never believed there'll be a COVID, but it actually happened. And companies which had cash on the balance sheet, like a Infosys, like a TCS, like a Wipro, like a HCL, etc., Tech Mahindra have done very well. And many other companies who can raise money like the Tatas or the Reliance or other companies have done very well. So CFOs have realized that you got to have a balance sheet which is liquid. You got to have a balance sheet with long-term debt and not short-term debt. And you got to have a balance sheet with integrity you can quote. And you got to create a revenue structure which has got variability. In Infosys, about 30% of salaries was variable. So we could cut it down and keep the jobs because they don't want people to lose jobs. So they must make reduce the fixed costs and make a lot of the costs variable. And they must also make sure that they've got credit lines with banks. Everybody's scrambling to get credit line with banks and liquidity. They learn liquidity management, cutting costs, etc. I'm happy in the startup area, the founders have led the way to cut their own salaries, not to lose jobs, not to lose people, and to create liquidity as much as possible. In our 14 funds and 250 companies, only maybe 5 companies may die. The rest are doing reasonably well, and they all learn. So I think across the board, there's been a change in behavior, and people have learned how to manage in a crisis, which will give them a good sense of standing, good sense of understanding in the next few years. Yes, the markets are going up, and now many of them are going for IPOs, they're divesting and doing many things. Interest rates have come down, and hopefully that will reconfigure their debt and their balance sheets. And banks are willing to give credit to good companies which have got a AA rating, and the markets will be liquid for some more time. So I think they will learn how to manage treasury, how to raise loans, etc., and all the kind of stuff. And the markets have collapsed for companies with bad governance. Bad governance is no again. And I think they're realizing that all this has to be done. They're realizing how to be real CFOs instead of being cowboys, using money to borrow and to do all kind of stuff. Well, the realization had come a few years ago, but now the criticality has come through. And as far as chartered accountants are concerned, I think the value of a chartered accountant has come out clearly in this crisis. Because a chartered accountant is a financial analyst, he's an accountant, he's a tax planner, he's a financial strategist. He can help you raise money. He can help you create liquidity in the balance sheet. He can do many things. And his advice and his expertise has become invaluable to most corporations. And most corporations realize they need a good chartered accountant to work with them. And I think chartered accountants across the board have risen to the call and have done very well. But they need to get more expertise in certain areas because many of them are confining themselves to tax and audit, and the role in tax is coming down. So I think they too are learning, and they're using technology in a very big way because tax filing and all compliance have gone digital. They're learning to use digital technologies, using it for their business. And I think it's been a good break for chartered accountants, and I'm sure they'll do much better in future.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that. Shifting tracks, I do want to ask you a question back on geopolitics of China and US. There is a trade war, there is an underlying political tension. And countries are arguably moving away part of their production capacity away from China, as you also mentioned. Vietnam is a good example that has captured this opportunity and has been a star as far as exports is concerned. I want to ask you whether India has made any tangible progress to seize this opportunity of de-risking from China, right? In terms of creating production capacity, in terms of making it easier to do business. Are there any green shoots in this sphere?
Well, to me, one big green shoot has been the understanding among Indian companies that they have to become contract manufacturers. Look at China. The global majors are there, but they have not invested hugely compared to the Chinese. The Chinese manufacture them, put their label and they chop and they sell it, right? Like Apple does and everybody does. We don't have this kind of contract manufacturing for global majors and for local brands in India, and that's happening in a very big way. In FMCG, contract manufacturing has come up. They're coming up in electronics in a very, very big way, and they're coming up in drugs in a big way. They're coming up in many areas. To me, that contract manufacturing and getting global majors, because that allows the global multinationals to quickly come to a country and ramp up and start selling. Otherwise, for them to come, set up a factory, get the land, invest and all that is going to take a lot of time. And China didn't work that way. So I think the Chinese manufacturer did it, and that reality has come, and now they're scouting for business. Second, government has made sure that they set up an incentive program for electronics, where we imported $40 billion last year to manufacture more in India, and that's attracted the big contract manufacturers like Foxconn, etc., to come for mobiles. Apple has started manufacturing here because there's a very big industry, etc. And that I think is going to increase. Our steel industry has been exporting more than they ever did in the history because they didn't have local demand. Now the local prices have gone up, but they still export and still increase capacity utilization in a big way. So as India benefited partially, not very significantly, because remember, when you go to Vietnam, you got 1,200 kilometers with China. You just go across the border. The same Chinese people go and set it up, and it becomes very easy. When you come to India, you are still about 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers away, right? You want to come to India, you want to set up. The Chinese companies in electronics are already here. They're doing very well. Xiaomi and Oppo are getting the market value through India, right? And I think that is working very well. So it'll take some time. The Japanese are coming. They're very serious. They're very slow to start, but they're coming. And I think they will come because they realize that China has eaten the breakfast. China is going to eat the lunch, and hopefully they should eat away the dinner. Because China globally has proven that they will dominate every industry in the world. I read an article which said the Germans are very, very upset because the Chinese are coming and selling capital goods back to Germany of the same quality. They finally got there where they can sell capital goods, and they will sell it for 30-40% cheaper than Germany. And Germany fueled their need for capital goods in China over the last 30 years. And they were very happy with what the Chinese did. The Chinese are eating the lunch, right? So I think they eaten the lunch of other European countries. So China is a formidable beast. We have never seen that kind of thing happen. The only other instance in world history was when the United States came up as a global power before the First World War, and in between the two wars and after the World War, when it became 50% of world GDP, right? And it impacted everybody else because the rest of the world was down. So now I think this import means supply chains will diversify, but China will still remain dominant for the next maybe 10 years. But China is now focusing on internal economic growth, internal consumption, much more. So they know that they will not grow at 8 to 9%. They may grow at 3 to 5%. That's still on $15 trillion is pretty good. So I think there'll be much better diversification. India will get its share, but India has to improve local consumption, create contract manufacturing, become a base for exports. In India has to be externally oriented. Look at the IT industry. Last year, we exported $150 billion of software. Our local IT industry is only worth $30 billion. $150 billion of software. We have 75,000 IT companies. And of the top 10 software service companies, the market value globally, 5 are Indian, top 5, 3 are Indian. Of the 2 million employees in the top 10, 1.5 million are Indians. Out of the 6 million people working in America in software, 1 million are Indians. Out of 4.5 million working in India in software, 2 million work for American companies. Out of 8 million working for American companies, 3 million are Indians. 25% of Silicon Valley founders are Indian, 35% in cybersecurity. We dominate the world. And that can be a role model for the rest of Indian industry. They must look at the whole world. $82, $83 trillion of global GDP as a market, and not the small $3 trillion of India.
Awesome.
That's happening.
Right. Fantastic. No, I think while China is the big brother globally, I do believe that the next decade, India has a lot to prosper and benefit from the reforms, as you mentioned.
Look, I have seen India's GDP grow up from $275 billion in 1991 to $3 trillion today in 2000 March growing at 8.5% a year for 29 years continuously.
Fantastic.
I've seen that happen. I've seen the rise of a great industry, a software industry. I've seen the rise of a great country. I've seen the rise of a great company like Infosys. I'm very, very optimistic about India.
Fabulous. That's great to hear, Mr. Pai. You know, before we jump into the next question, I'm going to request the audience to please post your questions in the chat window, and we will line up a few questions for Mr. Pai in the live Q&A session. Let me move on to the next question, Mr. Pai. The seismic shifts in the global equity markets. You showed us the FANG stocks, the big tech. We're witnessing the era of big tech, data, platform companies, including the same scenario playing out in India with the emergence of Reliance Retail, Reliance Jio, and Leo as an ecosystem player, as an overarching conglomerate touching all walks of life. Will Reliance Inc. be too overbearing on India Inc.? And what are the pros and cons?
Well, Reliance is becoming hegemonic. They're trying to become a digital monopoly like an Apple. So India has to be careful. We must make sure they don't dominate the market and kill everybody else. They want to get into startup. They want to get into various industries and dominate the industry. They got the capital. Mukesh Ambani is a fantastic entrepreneur, unbelievably brilliant man who knows macro, micro, and he knows everything.
Yep.
And I think the only limit to their ambition will be their ability to execute, which they're doing very well so far. But I think the matter of worry that one company is dominating the ecosystem so very, very high, and hopefully we'll have a competition from global majors. The good news about that is that we got Amazon there, we got Walmart and Flipkart there. Unlike China, where you have a Baba, you have all three manufacturers, and you know we got a good Indian player. That's very good news.
Yeah.
In telecom, we got Bharti. Though Vodafone is limping, we got Bharti with Singtel backing it, and I hope Bharti gives great competition. They've done extremely well so far. So I think we have to live with it. We have to understand the impact. But certainly, what Reliance has done is to show India how to scale up.
Yeah.
Reliance has never been scared of scale. Jio, he put in $50 billion without earning money to build a huge, huge network. And the network is an intelligent network where he can shift to 5G at a low cost, and invested in creating his own 5G technology and team. And he has said that he will now use new spectrum to bring in 5G without taking technology from anywhere in the world. That is remarkable. That shows the great vision of the man. I think India requires a Reliance. India requires a Mukesh Ambani. Yes, we got to see the long-term impact, but we need big players in the country. We need big players who can invest hugely, who can create scale, who can give India what it wants. But too often, we have too many small players fiddling around, and we've been looking at higher profit. We need a bigger place to come in, and we got to learn how to manage it.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Sticking with India, India has recently witnessed landmark reforms, farm reforms, labor and land reforms. It is said that these reforms, which have rationalized 44 laws, 1,200 sections into a more entrepreneur and investor friendly structure. Equally, farm reforms should help farmers get price discovery across various buyers whilst having a safety net of the MSP. When we see the impact and what needs to happen on the ground, when do we see the real impact? I mean, how do you see this playing out? I know it's early days, but just want to get your sense.
4 to 5 years. 4 to 5 years, it takes time. Defense reforms have been there. Yes, we're going to see, Bharat Forge manufacturing guns. We've seen an order for 10 guns given to an Indian company. We've seen an order for drones given to Indian companies come up. So more money has to come. So we're going to see 4 or 5 years. And for farmers to increase their income, we need to develop the infrastructure. Right now, Agritech's selling 2,500 crores per month, giving farmers 30 to 40% more. They need to be connected to markets. So India is a very inefficient, less competition intensive market in many, many areas. And for them to break, it has to happen. For example, only after GST, we had one national market. We never had a national market.
Yes.
We had only states, broken up states. With GST, all the state barriers are gone. Goods can go from Bangalore to Delhi in 1.5 days. They took 3 days, right? So much of inefficiency was there, they've been swept away. So agriculture reforms, defense sector reforms, MSME reforms have been announced, the new labor code, for it to be activated and to have an impact will take 4 to 5 years. But the good thing is that everybody is positive, everybody has seen that, and Prime Minister Modi has taken very, very tough decisions. You can see the opposition to farm reforms from Punjab. We have a political party leader going there trying to drive a tractor across the border into Haryana. And we're seeing why it happens, because vested interests are there in Punjab who are making a lot of money between the farmer and consumers, and they don't want to let it go. So a lot of vested interests have developed in India over the socialistic planning model. And they have to come down for India to become efficient. become a much more complex economy, it takes time. We are a democracy. We can't order people around. And, we have a very, very active media. We have very super active judiciary. Everybody has an opinion and everybody is articulate. Everybody goes to Twitter, Facebook, and abuses India, does everything else. It's a perfectly beautiful country to live in, doing so many things. You don't know what exactly is happening.
Fantastic. That's very inspiring. Now we're going to seamlessly slide into the live audience Q&A, and I'm going to take the opportunity to ask the first question and request Kala to follow up with the next one. How can we bring sustainability at center stage in business strategy? Are we doing enough, and what is the role that ICAI can play?
Well, I think it's important for sustainable to come to understand what is sustainability. To my mind, sustainability is about reducing our use of energy resources and reducing the carbon footprint. First point. Second point, of reducing waste. And the third point, of using better materials and better technology to make sure that consumption intensity of material comes down. Now, as far as energy usage is come, what companies can do is to make sure they reduce their carbon footprint. For example, at Infosys, for the last 8 years, we reduced our per capita energy consumption from 273 units per person month to 136. We reconfigured our buildings. We brought in new technologies. We brought in new equipment. We are able to halve our energy consumption per people. They become the most efficient, company in the world. We now have 1 ton of AC for 750 square feet, whereas we had 1 ton for 250 square feet. So if all companies look at the carbon footprint and take steps to reduce it, it will work. And what chartered accountants can do is to create reports, sustainability reports, and make sure they calculate all the carbon footprint and put it out, and then look at the best-in-class companies as to what to do and advise people what has to be done. Second is reducing waste. There's a lot of packaging waste, a lot of waste happen in the manufacturing process, servicing process. How do you identify, reduce waste and become competitive? Our fruits and vegetables supposed to be wasted to the extent of 30%. I think it's more 20%. But I think how do we improve supply chain to make sure the reduction is there? How do you have cold storages? If we're able to reduce wastage, we'll be able to be more competitive. And this can come by the sustainability report and people doing much more research. And then using a new material, right? Now we are seeing that the use of graphene in silicon chips is coming up. The use of fuel cells for vehicles is coming up. The use of alternate energy like solar and wind is coming up. India has the alternate energy capacity of 85,000 megawatts out of 350,000 megawatts. And we plan to go up to 175,000 megawatts by possibly 2 years. And solar and wind have become very big energy sources. And if companies say we're going to have green energy and we're going to become sustainable, it will work. So I think a lot of action has to happen all over. We have a very active civil society with agitating in courts, which is on the streets doing many things. But I think all corporations have to set goals for themselves. And that comes by reporting, by creating a triple bottom line, creating a sustainability report, identifying and having a clear strategy to reduce their energy consumption and carbon footprint, which I think is happening in India in a small way and is accelerating every single year.
Thank you. Kala, you're on mute, Kala.
Yes. Any thoughts on how automobile sector get impacted? Is there a change in the consumer behavior post-COVID new normal?
What is that? I can't hear you. What is that?
Any thoughts on how automobile sector get impacted? Is there a change in the consumer behavior post-COVID new normal?
Well, I think in China, after the last SARS, I think there was a massive increase in personal vehicles. And our auto companies are saying that this may happen in India too. For example, two-wheeler production is all-time record in September. Cars came back by 20% in September compared to the same month last year, etc. And I think that may happen because public transport for the middle class is becoming less attractive because of infection fears. And we have seen a massive increase in the purchase second-hand cars for the last 2-3 months. Second-hand cars have taken off. And that means something is cooking up there. We have to see what happens. Interest rates have come down. So I think there'll be a change in personal behavior. We may have more traffic jams, more problems. I think more electric cars will come in the next 2 or 3 years. Certainly the auto industry is going to disruption. We went to Bharat 6 from Bharat 4 over the last 2 years. And now we have to go to EVs. They're having large incentive program for EVs. People are becoming very conscious of EVs. And of course, diesel prices, petrol prices remain high because government has not reduced the price, which is very good. They're taking the money to putting it for roads and other construction, which is very, very good. And I think, we're going to see a dramatic change in the next 2 or 3 years going to EVs in a very substantial way, and demand is picking up.
Okay.
Mr. Pai, this is a bit of a crystal ball gazing, forward-looking question. How do you see India 10 years from now? Would it be able to balance economic prosperity with social equality, justice, and prosperity for all, which is all equally important?
Well, if Modi comes back after 2024, yes. Because let me tell you, Prime Minister Modi has done more for the poor in this country than any Prime Minister in the last 5 years. It's all record, okay? It's all data, it's all recorded. Because today our biggest problem is we have 60% of the population who live below subsistence or close subsistence. We have to take care of them first. They must have the basic necessities of life. Food on the table, toilet, light in the switch, power in the switch. They must have a house over their head. They must have a mobile connection, an internet connection, education for the children, road to the house. They must have a gas stove, anything else, so that they can have hope. And they must see a dramatic improvement. It's happening. By 2022, almost all Indians will have a house. 2022, all Indians will have running water in the house. All Indians have a toilet. Most Indians have a cell phone. Most Indians have internet connection. All that is happening. And the impact of that will be felt in higher aspiration. To me, that's the biggest thing that has to happen. All right? Because to me, that's the most important thing. Because you can't be a poor country after 70 years of freedom. We were the richest country in 1825 in the world. And we became the poorest by the time the British left. They looted $45 trillion in value in today's money. So we have to do that. To me, that's the most important thing. And second, we must remove crony capitalism from India. We must make India more competitive, create incentive for young entrepreneurs, give young India the dream to achieve many things. That's happening with the rise of entrepreneurs, the rise of anything else. Third, we must create a single national market, break barriers between states, break barriers between remote areas by building roads, by connecting them, having the railways to go, make sure that people can travel, move goods freely. All the reforms have happened. But in a large country, for that all to come together, for people to do, we have a lot of people. Remember, we have a lot of people. And people are working in 4 different centuries. Bangalore is the 21st century. The smaller city, the 20th century. You go to rural area, the 19th century. Go to the tribal, the 18th century, right? Everything has to come together. We've got 22 official languages, man. It's a very complex country. There is no country in human history as complex as India, with so many challenges India, and which is doing so well like India. China is more homogeneous. You have the Communist Party, which is totalitarian. They could take decision, they could put it through. They're much more disciplined, being a single ethnicity and being under communist regime for a long time. Indians are not like that. All of us have different opinions. All of us speak different languages. We eat different kinds of food, but we are very together. But to me, this diversity is the source of creativity. The diversity of a rich culture. There's so much of culture, so much of difference, so much of variance. That is what will create a great society. So I think we need this sustained growth and reform for the next 4 to 5 years, and we'll see an impact.
Fantastic.
We'll be $11 trillion, $10 trillion by 2031. We'll talk again. I may still be around.
Oh,
just one question, Mr. Pai.
Yeah.
Where will the stock market Sensex, which is hovering around 38,000, 39,000, where do you see it going in the next 3 to 6 months and 1 year and 2 years, short term to medium term?
Well, if you knew that, I'll be putting all my money there and borrowing money, selling off all my assets and doing it. But anyway, let me try to give you some.
Exactly. I'm doing the same thing.
I know.
Right answer, and I'll be very happy to hear from you. Thank you, sir.
Let me tell you. See, the stock markets always move ahead of action. The stock market collapsed in the last week of March when it came down by 30%, and now they've gone up. When they've gone up, not all companies have gone up. Reliance has doubled in value. The banking sector is still down. IT sector has gone up. Some of the smaller companies have gone up. Small caps have not gone up so much. Some of them are done. So it is not very broad-based. It's not very broad-based. It's very narrow-based. For example, natural resources has not gone up. Oil and gas has come down. Oil distribution has come down, etc. So my view is India is a stock picker's paradise. It's not a macro investment thesis. You can't have a macro investment thesis. You got to go below and pick up stock pickers. And when you pick up the stock pickers, you got to see whether they got sustainable businesses and everything else, and how to invest, where to invest, etc. So my view is there'll be a lot more IPOs till about December, March. If another stimulus comes, there'll be an upswing in the market. They'll be selling at every interval when the market goes up because the market is not sustaining itself. People are still very cautious. Lot more foreign money will start coming in end of the year and beginning of next year because excess liquidity in the United States and globe has to seek a way out. And there are, there in the US too, Fangman has already gone up. They're already in tech. They're doing so many things. Now the money has to go out and many, many people are coming to invest in India and Asia. So I think all these things are going to happen. So I think for the next 2 years, I'm very positive about the stock market. I would recommend you call Saurabh Mukherjee, who runs Marcellus, who is a very, very good portfolio manager, to come and talk to all of you. And possibly he can answer it much better because he's a greater expert. I do understand the economy. I do understand the market to some extent. But he's a much better person to tell you which sector, what to do, because he does a lot of research and he's a fundamental research analyst. He's not a cowboy.
Fantastic. Kala?
Yeah. To achieve Atmanirbhar, we need to generate enough employment through reskilling and retooling. Are we investing enough?
We're not investing enough. India requires at least 35 to 40% of GDP as investment. We're investing 28%. We need more private sector investment. But the problem is when you invest so much and create capacity, where do you sell? There is not that much of consumer demand in the country. Why there's no consumer demand? Because profitability in India is quite high. Everybody wants to earn more profits. They're not looking at greater revenue. So they got to export outside to remove surplus capacity, lower the cost, and to make more money. So I think it's important that change in behavior has to come. Let me give some data. India has 125 million tons of steel capacity, second largest in the world. But China is about 1.2 billion. And India has 545 million tons of cement. China has 2.2 billion. India is number 2. India has 305 million tons of fruits and vegetables, number 2 after Brazil. India is the largest producer of rice in the world, second largest producer of wheat in the world, largest producer of milk in the world, largest producer of spice in the world, largest in most things because it's a huge country. But then the prices are not there like America. So what should you do? You should export and use the surpluses and do it very well. And I think all that takes a change in behavior. Hopefully Atmanirbhar will change behavior among a lot of people. So I think Atmanirbhar will also allow certain industries like telecom, like, possibly electronics, like drugs to become much, much bigger because government is giving them some incentives to scale up. Because the government doesn't give incentives, they'll only go to profitable growth. So China has given a lot of incentives. China has developed them. They're giving a scale. Right now, I'm told in the drug industry, for raw material, China is raised the prices and reduced the prices of intermediaries. They don't want other countries to come up. And they're subsidizing. So India needs to do something like that to develop. But the good news is the world wants an alternative to China, and India can certainly capitalize on that.
Right. One other question on the MSME sector. I think you touched on the fact that corporates are not over-leveraged or they're looking at alternate ways of financing, including overseas. When you look at the MSME space, yes, banks are doing a lot, but even then, more than 50% are underserved or underbanked in a sense, right? And in the growth of the economy is linked to the growth of the MSME sector. How do you see this flow of credit into the MSME sector, and what are some of the other aspects of MSME that will likely play out in the next few years?
You see, what are the biggest challenge for MSMEs in financing? They don't get paid in time. Their ARs are very high. The big companies don't pay them. And if you look at the big FMCG company, the CFO say, hey man, I got negative working capital. It's so stupid. You take suppliers credit, and then you have the checkbook of all your buyers. And when you supply, you fill up the check and put in the bank. You don't give credit and say, I got negative working capital. That is stupid. Because negative working capital is when your entire cycle comes down. When you don't pay your suppliers, you take 30 days credit from a small guy, you're paying his cost of capital and squeezing him, right? At Infosys, we told everybody, for the month, if you don't give me the bill by the 30th of the month, I will not pay you. So we didn't want any creditors in the balance sheet on the 30th of every month. We should call them and pay them advances and get rid of them because we don't want creditors. We don't want anybody's credit. Of course, we got a good rate. We'll negotiate. We don't want a credit. And that's the kind of attitude. So, to be the MSMEs, if you tackle the problem of the AR for the MSMEs, when they sell to bigger companies, by giving them discounting, by giving them factoring, giving them all that and pump money into that, they will be able to rotate money and do things much better. To me, that is the big gap. And the banks are not able to do that because factoring has not taken off, bill discounting has not taken off. Now with GST, we know exactly to whom they are sold. And through GST, iSpirit is come with a new portal where they can put up all the bills and the banks will bid to give them credit, provided it is accepted. And to GST and the portal, they can accept because they can just look at the GST and see who's taking credit. Because when you sell on GST, you can't, the buyer can't take credit for the GST unless it is paid into the government, right? You can't take credit. So that's a good check. And that is where I think the innovation will come. I've seen many startups come up there and try to do the bill discounting financing. And if that happens in a big way, we'll be able to solve this financing issue for a very long period of time. And second thing is that when they want MSMEs to expand, they must make surpluses. Many of them are not making surpluses. So we recommend to government that they must give them capital grants, provided they got a good track record and provided they take a term loan from a bank, because if you take a term loan bank, they have to put up 25-30%. They may not have the money. Give them a 10-15% capital grant to the very good MSMEs so that they can double, triple the capacity and do things mucher and get economies of scale. Otherwise, it'll be a slower growth. So 2 or 3 things have to be done. And this bill discounting and AR receivable discounting is happening. Hopefully, it should go up 10-fold, 20-fold in the next 2 to 3 years.
Fantastic. I just want to also point out to everyone that we have about 10 minutes left. So
no, we can continue. I'm free. Don't worry.
Okay, fantastic.
I canceled my meeting after 6.
That's really kind of you, Mr. Pai. Maybe I'll just ask you one quick question, then turn it over to Kala again. We've heard work from home during the COVID, ranging from, hey, it's going to be 100% work from home, and then you don't need these buses flying the IT workers in India back and forth, or for that matter, anywhere in the world. Some companies have announced that even for the next 2-3 years, they've given the choice to the employees to turn up at office or not. So do you think this is a temporary phenomenon? Do you think that productivity is impacted, not impacted, partly impacted? Or is this, just like...
I've read all these comments, and the reality is like this. The IT industry has 4.5 million people. 95% went to work from home within 15-20 days. Remarkable. But 30 to 40% of the workforce lives in paying accommodation. They live in very poor circumstances in one single room. They're not paid very well, contrary to all that, because starting salaries are not increased for 8 years. It's a very bad scene. Now, work from home works for people who have bigger houses, who are empty nesters, so that you can have a part of the house as an office and your wife can sit somewhere and have her own office and both can do Zoom to whoever they want to do, etc. It doesn't work for younger people who are staying in PG, is miserable, being cooped up in a small house with nowhere to go. They want to meet their friends, they want to chat, they want to gossip, they want to go to the coffee shop, and all of them work in offices which are much, much better than the place where they stay. All right, so it doesn't work. Point number 1. Point number 2, if you are married and you got a kid or 1 or 2 kids, you stay with your wife. You don't want the small kid to be yelling at you all the time. I'm sorry about that, but you want the kid to go to school and you want a relief, and then both start fighting because you take care of the kid, you do the housework. It's a problem, man. It's a big problem. So many people, mental health issues have come up and adjustments have come up. They also want to go away and they don't want to go. That's why they're going away. It's only the people above 40, 45 who are very happy. People above 50 are very happy. They got big houses, they're well off, and they're finding that less stress. They don't have to travel. They can do all their activities. They were reluctant earlier because, they were not used to technology. Now very used to technology, and they're very happy. They don't want to go back. The State Bank of India chairman said, we're going to have work from anywhere. Of course, he has a very nice bungalow, very large house, a fantastic man, Rajesh Kumar retiring tomorrow, great guy. But all the senior people in the head office of SBI are working from home. They're very happy because they don't have to travel, right? Traveling in Mumbai is terrible, right? And they never did it earlier because they wanted face-to-face meeting. Now the myth of face-to-face meetings is broken. And today many people say that you're able to get meeting with senior people easier than earlier because you don't have to travel, you don't have to synchronize calendars. You can do many meetings in the day. You don't have to give tea and coffee and do idle chatter to people when they come and see you. So very efficient for senior people, not for that. So my view is 25 to 30% of people in every corporation will be work from home by rotation permanently. It could go up to 30, 40%. Many startups are going to 50, 60%, right? So space per person will go up in the commercial complexes.
Right.
Because everybody had in Bombay 50 square foot per person or 30 square foot, that will go up because you need social distancing for the next 1 year also, right? And then demand for space will not come down. Today I saw a 37% increase in the third quarter of this calendar year for, office space in India. I got to read that report. I just saw the headlines. I'm very shocked, but I guess it's happening. So I don't think demand for space will come down because Bangalore has been absorbing 15 million square feet of grade A office space each year for the last 15 years. And lastly, I think there will be a change in behavior and there'll be more distributed offices. More people will try to avoid travel. There are smaller offices. So co-working in many different locations will come because the need for high bandwidth, high infrastructure. Power situation in some of the areas is still bad. Bandwidth is still bad because they have to lay the cable and all that. The infrastructure issue, that will take some time. So people may be distributed all across, go to co-working and work from there. And suddenly there'll be a very distributed workforce, much more than a concentrated workforce that you have.
Kala,
Yeah.
thank you.
Other than human resource, what is the other biggest resource which India possesses to outgrow the world? And on the other side, what is the biggest hurdle stopping India to be a world leader?
The biggest need right now, well, human resource, the biggest need. Biggest need right now is innovation. And the biggest drawback is lack of adequate innovation. Now, how does innovation come? Innovation comes through a culture of openness and a culture of sufficiency. Innovation comes through research activities happening, which is not happening to the scale that's required. Innovation comes through high quality PhDs who can do very innovative thinking, which we don't have. And innovation comes through a market which is large enough where innovators can really make big money. So we are just growing. Innovation is much better today than it was 5 years ago. It will be much better 5 years from now than it was today. So I think it's evolving. For example, in China today, if you're an innovator, you do something, you can rapidly become a billionaire in 4 years, right? You can attract capital, you can do many things. In the United States, you can do many things. So it's not that we don't have bright people, we need more innovation, but innovation requires investment, innovation requires an ecosystem, innovation requires many things else. For example, in Israel, a small country, the government spending on defense is creating a lot of innovation because funding is available, R&D is available, and you can do many things. And you need to have a culture where people don't have to work for a living. They can work for bigger things, right? When you're forced to work for a living, how will you be innovative? Because you have to take a risk, right? We need many more people. And today, the new generation coming out of college have got parents who earn enough. They don't have to support the parents or the siblings. So they're all getting into startups and doing many things. To me, the biggest challenge for India is we don't have enough innovation. We're having, but not enough for a size of the economy our size. And the biggest need is innovators. All right, and the ecosystem for innovators, and is all linked to human beings. Because let me say this, the human being is the only catalyst. A robot can't work without a human being at the back. An AI algorithm cannot work without a human being at the back. Now, you may require lesser human beings, brighter human beings, more innovative, but still need the human being.
Right.
And none of us want to, talk to a robot. We really want a human being, even though we see those robots in America look like human beings, they don't like the conversation, right?
Right. So the next question is on how do you see the real estate sector in the next few years? Now you are talking about work from home. So that will also increase the demand for housing?
Yeah, I think bigger housing demand will increase. I think people require bigger housing. I think the relative well-off people will want bigger houses. They may go a little bit to the suburbs. The center of the city, the crowded city may decongest. And many people, senior people may choose to go to smaller places. Why stay in a big city, like in the heart of the city, like Mumbai with all that big thing? Why in Delhi? You can also go to a smaller place. And people are realizing they need to be healthy, they need to have fresh air and to go away. So I think real estate will do well because India is supply constrained. Of course, price of real estate has to come down. I just saw data, the registration in Mumbai has gone up again because they cut the registrable rate and they're selling at a discount of 10 to 15%, which is important because the price of real estate has been too high. And they've been too high because all the real estate guys put money, everywhere else into buying land and buying. Now, a lot more land will be released. Government is also easing up the land. In Karnataka, for instance, farmers can easily sell the land. You don't have to go convert the land into industrial land. You can just, sell the land, and anybody can buy the land and convert, and it has to be done automatically in 30 days. They brought about the great reform. If that happens all across India, a lot more land will be released. And now we are building a huge road network, all the highways, so that, commuting becomes easier. Delhi has got 385 kilometers of metro going up to 500 kilometers. They're creating high-speed rail to Meerut and all the surrounding places up to 200 kilometers. And that will allow you to commute, right? Because you need commuting, you need transportation, and then the land prices come down because you don't have to be concentrated in one area. It's happening in India in a big way. And I think there's good prospects for good people.
Fantastic. Mr. Pai, I want to ask another question, which is, what's your advice to the next generation of youngsters, not just chartered accountants? Which field of education or work should they choose? Because there is so many varying opportunities. There's robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So, there is a bit of overeducation as well, and underemployment in the real sense of the word.
Well, Ramki, I would tell every young person, follow your dream and follow your dream. Do whatever makes you happy. Fantastic. What else can you tell them? They must do what you make it happy. Remember, when we are growing up, our parents told us, go into this, we did it, because those days, economically, we are not very strong. We are not very well off. We had to work for a living, right? Long time ago. Today, our children, let them follow their dream. We'll pay for it. And our whatever we earn will go to them, right? We have saved enough for them. So they'll be well off. They don't have to support a sibling. They don't have to support us. So just tell them, follow your dream, do something which you like. You want to be a bum, be a bum. I won't tell my son, but travel around the world, be a musician, be a dancer, be a techie, be anything, but follow your dream and live and try to be happy.
Awesome. That's really nice to hear. Another question that has come up on the chat box. India has enormous IT power, but we still don't have one big company like a Microsoft or Apple. Of course, we have global CEOs, whether it's Microsoft, Google, MasterCard, various other companies. Are we not good at IT architecture, and are we happy to serve others as IT? So what's your view about, will India have a world power?
Singapore is a very rich country. $60,000 per head per capita income, equal to the US. You don't have big companies because there's no market, right? Now tell me, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, Facebook, Tesla, Amazon, where are they? America. They're not in Europe. Europe only has SAP. They're not in Japan. Japan has only Nintendo, that too only local. Why is that? Because for the innovation and large companies to come up, you need a large market. $22 trillion GDP in the United States. You need lots of capital surplus, capital available for risk. You need technology assimilation. That means companies are willing to take your technology. You need high per capita income because B2C can do many things. Those things don't exist anywhere. They at least exist in India. India has just got a $30 billion local market. So you're not going to be very big on $30 billion, right? Yes, if you do e-commerce because it is just variant of retail, you can do well, but it requires a lot of capital. So to create a Google, to create an Apple, to create everything else. Now China did it. Why did China do it? They shut out the market to global players. They created a firewall. And there too, you have a Baba, you have a Baidu, you have many companies coming up, maybe 150 unicorns. India has got only 40. That's because the $15.5 trillion economy. Chinese invest $65 billion a year on venture. India invests only 12 to 13, out of which only 10% is Indian. China, 65% is Chinese money. America invests $135 billion. So unless you got, it's not about innovation, it's not about great brains, it's not about software architecture, it's about availability of markets, availability of risk capital, availability of companies to buy your stuff, availability of consumers. All the things have to come together to create those great companies. They don't exist. I've been facing this question for the last 25 years. The leftists in India say, oh, you are not a Google, you're only a cyber coolie. Why? You're providing services to the world. What have you done? Why you're not at Microsoft? I asked them, what have you done in your life to ask me the stupid question? At least we created some of the best software service companies in the world. We dominate the world. We created a huge number of jobs. And we got great technology. What have you done in your life apart from mouthing inane stupidities? Correct? And the same thing, because they don't understand, you need all those things. Why Europe doesn't have it? Why Germany has only SAP? Russia doesn't have anybody, right? Russia was a rich country at one point of time, Japan. So there is a need for all that to come, and that happens only in one country. And you know, the best minds will go to the US.
True.
Sunny California, 52% taxes. They want to pay a lot of taxes. They want to be, you know, green. They want to be all kind of stuff. I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. Kala?
Yeah. In this era of importance of data, which you have also been explaining, fake news and data mismanagement, what is your views on the same?
Look, let me tell you one thing. Social media has democratized information flows, has empowered individuals. All of us have an opinion. We're able to express opinion freely. All of us have our angst, our anger, our bigotry, our hatred. We're able to express it freely, anonymously, and take it out. We never had an opportunity to take it out. We can fire Prime Minister Modi, President Trump, abuse them, do whatever you want. We never had an opportunity because we couldn't get to them. Now we can all get to them, right? So it's democratized. And that also means once media is democratized, there are no controllers who can control it. Earlier, the newspapers control the media. Few people wrote, we listened to them. We saw Barkadat to do the stupid programs on NDTV. We all believed them. We trusted them. They're all fake now. They did a lot of fake programs. But we believe them. Why? We are nothing else. We are only one Doordarshan, then a few channels and everything else, right? Arnab Goswami is going gangbust everywhere, taking everybody on. Why? There are 500 channels today. All right. So social media is fantastic. It's democratized. There's a lot of fake news. We have to come to a new normal. We don't know when it is, but this is fantastic. So there are negatives, there are the positives. And I think now earlier we depend on a few people to tell us what is right and wrong. We trusted them. Now we don't trust anybody. We have to learn how to analyze, how to find out the truth, and how to not to rely on something. And the period of time, once you're on social media, you learn it very fast. You form your groups and you get credible information, credible news. And that's exactly happening around the world.
Right. And just under a light-hearted question, recall the famous two picture of yours with the caption, Mr. Mohan, before IPO and after IPO. Do you plan to have anything like that on before and after COVID-19? In short.
Well, I lost weight, so I don't know. That was done for me. That was given to me by my people who worked with me. I know it was a fun thing. But I suddenly lost weight and I become healthier, fitter. And let me tell you, I lost my interest in travel. In 2019, I did 183 flights. 2020, March 10th, I was already on 135, another 10 flights before 31st of March. It got canceled. This year, if I don't have flights, after things come back, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to fly. I can talk to you by Zoom. I can do anything. So my whole life has changed. Many of the things I did, spending time, I don't want to do anymore. Well, I'm 61, so I think, I'm in a very different state compared to all of you. So to me, I think the important thing is, this has been an inflection point for all of us. All of us should re-examine our lives and find out what is really useful, what are we supposed to do, what we should not do, and look back and decide how we want to live our life in future. What makes us happy? What is the real meaning of things? How do we maintain relationship? What is important to us? What is not important to us? And how do we take care of our health and not burn ourselves out? My friend used to tell me, my candle burns at both ends. It both gives a beautiful light. But oh, my friends, oh, my foes, it will not last the night. If you don't want burnout, you want to last, you got to be very careful about your health because, we don't get younger every single day. So I think it's very important for all of us to realign our lives, to re-examine our lives and come to certain things that we want to do in life. And this COVID has been a fantastic thing. I've done it, to whatever extent I can. I'm sure all of you will do it.
Yeah. Mr. Pai, that was wonderful. As we sort of reach the fag end of the program, one of the questions that came up in the chat box is also, how do you remember so much statistics? How do you sort of rattle out figures and numbers? Is it something that comes naturally to you? And we just want to know the secret sauce.
Well, as a young man, young boy, my father was invested in many companies. I used to get annual reports. I developed a love for them. I used to read them like storybooks. Then I found out that FT and others give annual reports if you write to them. So I got all annual reports of big US companies, other companies. I read them. It was interesting. Then I went to shareholders meetings and asked questions of management. All right. And then I was in a financial service company. I worked on many things. And when I joined Infosys, I was asked by Murthy to join Infosys because I stood up in the AGM and asked him questions. Then Infosys as CFO, I gave a P&L account to Murthy on the last working day of every single month till I left at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with 99.5% accuracy.
Wow.
And he was a very demanding man. He still is a demanding man. He's a brilliant man. The best finance person I ever met. He understands the model. He understands this. He'll rattle off all the figures of Infosys from 1982 till today. He's an amazing man. And I dealt with him. And when I entered his room, if I raise some question, I have to give 3 answers. I got to think what he's going to ask, answer all his questions. So my trip was, I got to answer everything that Murthy is going to ask before he opens his mouth. So I got to have data. I got to give him all the analysis and do it. And he always told us, show me data. I had to give him the data. So it became a fetish that day, and it worked. And I love data. I read the economic survey. I've taken budget talks for the chartered account for the last 25 years. We do an economic analysis of the entire 2,000-page document that they give in the budget every single day. I remember all these numbers. I read the RBI annual report for the last 20 years. I know all the numbers. You know, I can remember most of them. So just, I like data. I like numbers. I like this, and I remember them. And it just works.
Amazing. I mean, I must say you've lived up to your reputation. You're a fountain.
I don't know.
You are brilliant, energizing, and the audience will go back today far more knowledgeable, more energized. And there's another comment in the chat window which says, Mr. Pai, will you become the next finance minister to convert the optimism into reality?
No, I don't want to be in the political world because I'm not suited for it. Because to be in politics, I mean, either the profession or otherwise, you need 5 characteristics to be in real politics. 1, you must have a hunger for power. I don't have a hunger for power. Okay. Second, you must have a way to make sure that you are able to, be devious, to checkmate everybody. I can't be devious. Third, you need perseverance. I got perseverance. Fourth, you need good communication skills. Yes, I got good communication skills. Fifth, you got to be an extrovert to meet people because you got to create network. I'm not an extrovert. So I think I don't have the characteristic. Now, to be a professional and to go work in government, I was called to join a government organization by very, very high up people. And I didn't join because I realized, working with many government committees, that the bureaucracy will not tolerate an outsider. They will make sure your powers are cut. If you make the mistake of joining, procedure, everything will be cut to you all the time so you can't become ineffective. So I said, I will become a voice of reason. I will communicate. So I advise the Prime Minister 5 times a day on Twitter. I tell everybody how to run the country. Hopefully they'll read it. Hopefully they'll like it. I write a lot along with Nisha Kolla, my colleague, my daughter-in-law. She's a remarkable researcher. We write a lot. You can see it all in the Sunday Guardian. And I talk to a lot of people. I create research reports. I do all that. And it has an impact. And that's what I do, try to create opinion. And it works. So that's all I can do.
Just outstanding to hear. Kala, would you like to sort of take any further questions or?
I think it's just last one question can we take? You have time?
Yeah, I got time. Don't worry.
Okay. Is COVID-19 expected to boost entrepreneurship in India, or does it dampen the mood for entrepreneurs and the finance ecosystem?
I think it's increasing the mood for entrepreneurs because the digital world has come, and the digital world removes barriers for entrepreneurs because using digital, they can grow very rapidly and they can get better value and they can be innovative. So I think COVID has been an inflection point. What would happen in 5 years is happening immediately in 6 to 9 months. So I think it's been a big boost for entrepreneurs, big boost. Now with a traditional business and you're an entrepreneur, you've got to change your business model. But if you're starting de novo, starting from the beginning, you can use new technologies to create a competitive advantage for yourself. So you've got to think through, and I think there's great opportunity. Look, at the end of the day, the question to ask is India going to grow or not? If India is going to grow, great opportunities for everybody. If it's a very mature economy growing at 1%, then it's a tough economy for everybody, correct? So India is going to grow. We're going to be a $10 trillion economy by 2031.
Fantastic.
Right. And you said 5 points why you not enter into politics. So has the COVID period helped you to think more spiritually?
I don't know. You look, I talked to Sri. He's been very good to me. He likes me very much. I work with Swami Madhu Pandit, who runs ISKCON in Bangalore, and Akshay Patra. We are co-founders. And Sadhguru, I met him a few times. I read him. I'm very interested. So I've got respect for all these people because they're doing a difficult job. You know, they're maintaining our spiritual traditions. They're thinking a lot. They're communicating with people. They're all good people. And I think they're doing a part, they're doing something which all of us need. All of us need solace. All of us need, contentment. We have many dilemmas. We don't know how to address them. And we are all emotional creatures. We have needs. And happiness only comes if you are contented. Happiness only comes if you understand yourself. Happiness only comes if you understand the purpose of life, how to overcome greed, how to overcome anger, how to have patience, how to treat everybody with respect. All that comes when you have a guru who can be a sounding board for you, who will be a voice of reason, and who can give you solace. And I think it's very important. The Gita is very important for us because, it tells you exactly what you have to do. It's very difficult to follow that because, you want to grow, you want money, you want to travel, you want a bungalow, that, everything else. But, at the end of the day, you are what you are because all of us come alone, we'll go alone. That's the reality of life. So you got to realize that, and nothing like a guru to tell you the important things of life. And what are the important things of life? Having stability and being happy wherever you are. Even if you don't have anything, how can you be happy? So I think having a guru is important. I don't have a guru whom I go to all the time, but I know a lot of people. I go there and I respect all of them and I listen to them. It helps me.
Okay. Thanks for that detailed explanation and answering to all the questions. As you said, we are positive and we look India to grow, and we will reach the 11 trillion economy, and we'll be.
See, all of you can contribute to India's growth by doing one important thing: build the brand for India. Do very well in your work. Be very ethical. Be exemplary. Become a role model for everybody. Become an example. So, as an Indian, people look up to you and give you a lot of respect. And if you do that, India will get more respect. And two, don't ever accept other people bullshitting about India and downgrading India. Push back. If anybody abuses India, tells you're poor, and yeah, we are poor, so what? We have been a 5,000 year civilization. We have been the richest country in the world. We'll come back. We suffered, we'll come back. And we'll outlive everybody in this planet. Don't worry, every country. So, don't ever accept anybody bullshitting. Don't accept journalists writing rotten, false narratives about this country. Give it back to them. Stand up for the country and become an exemplar. If these are the things that you're able to do, you would have done extremely well for your country of origin. Of course, your loyalty is to the country where you stay, but your country of origin, well, you have some emotions.
Yes, well said. Thank you for that. And before we end, I invite Mr. Sanjay to deliver the vote of thanks. Sanjay?
Yeah. Thank you, Kala. So it's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of our CA fraternity and the ICAI Singapore chapter. We want to express our gratitude for today's speaker, Padma Shri and Chartered Accountant Shri TV Mohandas Paiji, to grace this occasion with his virtual presence and for an enlightening and informative session. It was very interesting and indeed a pleasure to hear from you about your experience and knowledge in Indian and the global economy. Sir, as we are aware that Sir is associated with Akshay Patra Foundation, an NGO strive to eliminate classroom hunger by implementing the midday meal scheme. Like Akshay Patra, which never depleting supply of food to needy people. Similarly, sir, you are like a knowledge Patra, or in Hindi, I can call it the Gyan Patra for us due to your immense knowledge and experience. And we are very fortunate that you had shared some part of your knowledge and wisdom with us. We also thank to our moderator of today's session, Mr. Ramki, for engaging and thoughtful conversation. At last, we would like to thank all our members who are our true strength and viewers joined from the overseas for their continuous support and the contribution. Thank you all, and we wish you all a lot of success and happiness. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good talking to all of you. Thank you.